Hey everyone, welcome to Innovate. I'm Piotr. I'm the head of threat intel and platform here at Abnormal AI, and today I'm going to be talking to you about the mailbox under siege and 5 types of attacks that we're seeing across our customer base and happening in the wild. Let me start with this very brief introduction into why we're focusing on email. The key piece about email and why cybercriminals still prefer it as a vector of attack is pretty simple. There's about 8 billion people in the world. There's about 5 billion active mailboxes in the world, which ultimately means that email is the most used application and most used communication application by more than 60% of population in the world, which gives a massive opportunity for the threat actors when it comes to scams, attacks, and going after organizational data through the users who ultimately clicks on links and can be victims to different email-based attacks. Attacks that we're going to talk about in more detail today. The users and email often is recognized as the front door to every organization. It makes sense. Every businesses have to communicate. Users between the businesses communicate. People use email for personal communication. They also subscribe to different applications, SaaS platforms, social media for the usage of their email accounts. So pretty much email is everywhere. It again gives a massive opportunity for actors to leverage different social engineering themes to carry out their attacks. Emails often exploit trust. There's a lot that we can speak about when it comes to social engineering and trust, and how social engineering leverages trust to carry out successful attacks. But even for this point, just to make it simple, quite a lot of attacks originate from attacks and accounts that were already compromised, which means that the attackers can leverage the relationships that is already established between the account that was compromised and whatever that account wants to talk to. A simple example of that is vendor fraud cases, where you might have a person on the other side with whom you do business for weeks, months, if not years. And one day that person asks you to update the payment details for the next invoice. And everything about the email looks like every other email you receive from the person. So the chances of you going ahead and updating that are pretty high. Threat actors also leverage different tactics, and those tactics continuously evolve. They often use themes from the latest news that are happening in the world. They often focus on the latest technology. They often focus on the latest financial aspects, whether it's crypto, whether it's new payments, whether it's some sort of latest fintech technology that is out there. Any number of different things threat actors leverage pretty much an endless amount of lures and hooks to be able to exploit and gain users' attention and use that to then deliver malicious payloads. The final reason why email is still a preferred avenue of attacks is really the fact that a lot of the security solutions that are protecting the email security often approach the defenses with a bit of an old school mindset that is heavy on signature-based defenses, and is not able to keep up with the sophistication of the current threat landscape and the current attacks and different techniques that the threat actors are using. So the 5 advanced email attacks that we're going to speak about today are focused on cryptocurrency, file sharing phishing, multi-channel phishing, AI-generated business email compromise, and email account takeover. So let's start with cryptocurrency fraud. Cryptocurrency was created pretty much with this basic idea of decentralized system in mind, which means that there is no central there's no central body that regulates the transactions, and all the transactions happen inside of that system in a way that can enable the threat actors to perform a lot of scam and a lot of fraud. And quite often those transactions cannot be traced, but also allow for a much easier way to move funds between different wallets. there's a lot of complexity and there's a lot of hype. So cryptocurrencies, the technology behind cryptocurrency is actually pretty mind-blowing. There's a lot of amazing capability that lives and supports the cryptocurrency systems. That being said, a lot of those technologies is also not something that users know very well. And because of the hype and a lot of the get rich fast ideas and a lot of that marketing behind cryptocurrency, it creates this interesting ecosystem in which we have a lot of users who are excited about getting rich fast and don't really understand the complexity of the technology, which means that there's a massive opportunity and a massive market for threat actors to leverage those two components to be able to get access to assets, get access to money, get access to the financial assets of different users from different wallets within the cryptocurrency ecosystem. So ultimately, where money goes, the threat actor goes. And as you can see on the slide, $5.8 billion of total losses reported by API that happen in crypto alone, which is a massive market share, massive market opportunity for the threat actors. File sharing phishing attacks. This is a type of attacks that we're seeing a massive uptick when it comes to abnormal. I think since June 2023, we've seen about 350% increase in file sharing phishing attacks. The idea behind those attacks is pretty simple. We have a situation where the threat actors take the delivery of the payload outside of the email itself. Usually they will create a document in some sort of document file sharing SaaS application. It can be Dropbox, it can be DocuSign, it can be Google Docs. There's hundreds of those, if not more. And that document will include some sort of basic theme and a link to a phishing website. Then what the threat actors would do is they will share that document with all the users that they try to compromise. And what that would usually trigger in the backend is that the application, so the Dropbox, the DocuSign, the Google Docs, will send that email from Google, from Dropbox, from DocuSign. So it will come from a legitimate source. It will pretty much say, hey, user X shared this document with you. It obviously, the link inside of that email goes to a legitimate website, whether it's Dropbox, whether it's DocuSign, whether it's Google Docs. And once the user clicks on it and get access to it, it gets the opportunity to then fall for the link, fall for the hook, and get redirected to a landing page where the users will enter their credentials. Quite often, those SaaS applications are also API enabled, which means that the threat actors can perform those attacks at scale and automate a lot of the attack workflow and perform those attacks with much more ease and scale. Next example is multi-channel phishing. We have in multi-channel phishing, similar to the previous type of attacks where we have multiple stages. So we have in previous attacks, we had like the setup of the infrastructure and the link inside of the document and the email that points to that document, and then that document redirecting to a phishing website. The key difference between the multi-channel phishing is that the multi-stage happens between different channels of communication. So one of the simple examples that there's been a lot of attacks that use this multi-channel approach is users who are being targeted with job offers, where there's an offer for a job that pays about 200, 300 hours an hour, and you receive that iMessage from a recruiter telling you that they found your profile online and that you'll be a perfect match for this amazing opportunity. And then once you start interacting with the recruiter, at some point throughout this conversation, there is a redirect to a WhatsApp group, and pretty much there's another WhatsApp person that is going to get in touch with you to set up training, to set up another conversation and an interview process. So it pretty much bounces between different channels of communication. And that way, the threat actors can usually take away not only the attention from one medium to another, kind of giving the air of legitimacy for the entire scam, but also in many cases, this can also mean that the threat actors are taking away users outside of business organization, business boundary, and then get access to whatever they need to access through personal devices, through personal applications such as WhatsApp or Facebook, and pretty much compromise the user outside of the boundary of the business organization, all the security measures that they have in place. Another example of the attack is business email compromise. In those attacks, what we're seeing is pretty much there's no link, there's no attachment, there's no payload. A lot of those attacks are focused on context, and they simply make requests. Those requests can be as simple as, can you access this payment? Can you update this payment for the next payment you're going to send to us? In some cases, it might be an update to a document that changes financial details, things of that nature. So ultimately, to be able to recognize those emails and to be able to detect those emails, you need to understand the context of the message and really the intention of the message. So there's no specific link or attachment. That is a typical giveaway for a lot of the attacks, or at least the ones that what a lot of the social awareness trainings are focusing on. Business email compromise attacks are very hard to detect because ultimately you need to differentiate between quite often the relationship and the communication established between one vendor and your business person, especially if one of those accounts get compromised and the threat actor takes over the account and then leverages that account to inject themselves into an ongoing threads of conversation to carry out that attack. And especially now with with AI becoming a massive enabler for threat actors, business email compromise enable a lot more capability and lower the barrier of entry for threat actors to not only attack across many different geographical boundaries, because the language is not a problem anymore. ChatGPT and other AI-enabled agents enabled chatbots can create emails in whatever language you desire. You can give those chatbots documents or emails that you extracted or exfiltrated from the mailbox that you compromise, and ask to understand and enumerate the business relationship, the processes that the organization have for updating the payments, and also you can maintain the same style of the communication. So ultimately, it becomes much easier for the threat actors to be able to carry out those attacks, and it becomes even more difficult for the organizations to defend against those. Finally, email account takeover. Usually, most of those attacks either originate in some extent from email account takeover, or the actual action objective is the account takeover. So in that previous example of vendor fraud / BEC, email account takeover, in a lot of those cases, the threat actor will compromise an account and then use that account to carry out the business email compromise against different vendors, different partners, different business entities that this account is in business with. But in other cases, when we speak about other attacks, the idea behind phishing attacks or credential attacks, where the threat actors are trying to obtain credentials, ultimately leads to some sort of action objective. And in most cases, that action objective is taking over the account so the threat actors can perform some activity. Now, that activity might be as simple as compromising others and pretty much trying to scale up the level of what the attackers already have access to. It might mean exfiltrating data. It might mean accessing the data. It might mean performing any sort of BEC vendor fraud activities, or it might also mean trying to elevate your privileges and going after other assets of the organization, whether it's for ransomware purposes, stealing data, or performing other actions or objectives as necessary. So ultimately, what we're looking at is phishing the credentials, leading to stealing account, and ultimately stealing the identity that then can be leveraged to perform whatever actions that identity have access to. So a couple of examples of the categories of attacks that we spoke about. Cryptocurrency fraud. Here's an example of an attack that was going after Ledger, which is a hardware wallet for cryptocurrency that allows you to pretty much store access to your cryptocurrency assets through that digital wallet. And in this particular attack, there was an email that mentioned that there's an update to the wallet assets, and it required some action from the user. Once the user clicked on the link, they required some updates on the, and if you, obviously there's also a threat that if you don't update, if you don't perform this action, you might lose your assets. What that link led to was the website that pretty much tried to collect your recovery phase for your wallet. So similar to email accounts or any sort of social media accounts that you create, usually there's an option to restore your password, and you might leave your pet's name or something like that. For this particular wallet, there's a requirement to have between 12 to 24 words that are separated by space. So pretty much what this email was this email and this landing page was doing was really trying to collect as many recovery phases for as many wallets as possible. So then the threat actors could get access to those wallets and steal the assets inside of those wallets. Another example is multi-channel phishing. One of the examples of attacks that we've observed has a bit of a cryptocurrency theme, but the idea here and the focus of this is more on how the channels of communication switch as part of this attack. So the attack starts with an email that pretty much speaks about the possibility of a withdrawal of funds with a pretty high amount of funds. And it asks user to click the link to get in touch with the WhatsApp support group. Once the user clicks on that link, it opens WhatsApp and opens a specific application that was created inside of WhatsApp that pretty much pretends to be a blockchain support team. And as part of that, the threat actors then engage into obtaining more information from the user and leveraging that conversation and that application to then obtain information that can use to access the assets and then pretty much steal those assets from the wallet. Another example is for AI-generated BEC in action, is an example in which the threat actors injected themselves into a thread that was already happening about the business updates, where the threat actors pretty much, they initially compromise an email of a vendor, of a business entity, and then they use a ongoing thread between that account and another account to request a change of payment details. There was a bit of an explanation about what is the reason why those payment needs to be changed, but ultimately it led to a redirect of that change would lead to redirect of funds from the account should the victim fall for that. So defending against emerging threats, what can we do about those attacks? Well, the first thing is if humans are the front door and the email is the front door to every organization, we need to ensure that we help and we protect those humans and what is often considered to be the weakest link in cybersecurity. So what that means is ensure that users stay ahead and stay updated on the latest and greatest attacks that happen when it comes to email security specifically. Ensure you have proper defenses in place that can detect those attacks before they get into email mailboxes. And security awareness training is a very important part of those defenses, especially security training that is focused on dynamically creating content that is focused on the context of the job within specific person operates, because that increases the chances of really testing the potential weaknesses of what the user might fall for when it comes to the type of emails, the type of attacks, or the type of phishing lures and hooks. In security, there's often concept of building any security program often follows the idea of gain visibility. Once you have the visibility, you can detect. Once you can detect, you can respond. And then once you can respond, you can start building proactive defenses and start preventing. All of that is good, but if you can prevent things from happening in the first place, you're in a much better place. So ensure that you actually have defenses in place that allow you to stop the bad emails from reaching the mailboxes and reaching the users before even there's a chance for the user to engage with those emails. And that will definitely help with a lot of the threats that we're seeing and the email security in general. And obviously, the core theme to a lot of the conversations today is enable AI defenses as part of your security program. It is very important to not look at AI as an afterthought, but really look at it through the lens of like how can I match the tempo and the scale of the attacks and the attackers using AI with my defenses. So ultimately, what you want to be looking at is capabilities that allow you to understand not only the behaviors of your organization and what your users do, what is normal, but also to leverage AI to really be able to combat the attacks that originate from AI-enabled threat actors. That's pretty much it. Thank you so much for joining. If you have any questions, please let us know. And until next time, stay safe and thank you for being here.